Dota has some cool items, let's make pixel art of them, why not? First, blade mail. A good image to start with because it's silver. See, all of my Dota art is made with this 12 colour palette, which has no grey, a colour which would normally be used when drawing silver objects. As a result, I am forced to improvise, and in doing so I have learned that blue and cyan make for a very good silver as well. Observe well and you'll notice two levels of shading on this image. The first and largest, which pits the left-hand side of the armour into darkness, while the right side is in the light. And the second, which darkens the left of each individual scale-ish thing on the armour, so the individual scales have their own shading, but also generally follow this shading of the entire piece of armour. Scales on the left are darker overall than those on the right, even if they have their own shading gradients. This kind of two-tier shading is a pretty great way to add depth to scaly objects, mountainous planets, veiny body parts, trees, and obviously you can go up to 3 or more tiers of shading if need be. When this item is activated, it causes attackers to also take the damage that they deal to you, which is vaguely hinted at by the knives on this armour and its name, Blade Mail. I too will emphasise all these damn knives. They will be the main animated component of this image. Each knife is on its own layer, so I can animate them rising and falling individually, and I can easily arrange them into a sort of Mexican knife wave, which is achieved by animating them all rising and falling at the same time, and then dragging the animations out of sync for all layers. There you go, Blade Mail. Shivas Guard, another grey item. This one has great contrast between the lighter border areas and the dark inner panel, and the light markings within that panel, a distinction which I will be sure to make in the pixel version. Although it's hard, the limited palette means that the shadows on the light areas are the exact same colour as the dark areas, which I get around by making sure that the shadowy light areas and the non-shadowy dark areas rarely, if ever, come into contact. In terms of animations, I think I'll mostly be having particle systems for this one. In Dota, this item creates a wave of frosty, snowy stuff which has various effects, and I think it's only fitting to give the pixel version some frosty, snowy particle effects. This comes in two parts, the point-like particles on the left of the image and the haze in the top right. Haze meant to be looking all hurricaney, blizzardy, so the particles themselves are swirling hurricane-like, and there's a bit of glow behind them. Sometimes I find that the existing animations I've made have not enough gusto, so I just move the item up and down a little to trick people into thinking that it's better than it actually is. Such is what I do here, but with the addition of a little delay on the lower sections of the item. I find it further improves upon an animation for part of the object to lag behind a little. Vanguard. This item pretty much just blocks some damage. Makes sense, it's a shield. Looking at the item, I noticed that it has evil-looking eyes, and so I will make this the most satanic shield mankind has ever conceived of. First, the most important thing, the general shape has to be more or less correct. This process involves splatting down areas of colour and adjusting them until it's as accurate as you care to make it. In this way, pixel art is closer to painting than drawing, working with shapes rather than lines. This one was pretty hard to get the shape right with, though. I was never really happy with this image, at least not until looking back at it a couple of hours after making it. The animation here is sinister. Red particles, glowing eyes, pulsating light, no motion, basic stuff. The point-like particles here are essentially little blobs of up to about 8 pixels, which float about randomly and Brownianly while shrinking down to nothing. Eternal Shroud. This one is the one that is hard to animate. Drawing it, getting the shapes in order, this was easy and enjoyable. Behold. But you see, the animation of fabric is a difficult thing indeed. My goal was to have this animation show the fabric flapping about as though in a strong breeze. And so the plan is thus. Draw first the shroud in a neutral, unperturbed state, and then for each of the frames, perturb this neutral image in a slightly different place. If all goes well, so I thought, then it will appear that these perturbations are moving across the surface of the fabric. What's more, I decided to put in this dramatic flapping about of the fabric, then later do the shading, for I find shading to be easier. The way to do most animations, I think, is to first draw the start and end frames, then the midpoint between the two, then the quarter points between the midpoints and the ends, then the eighth points, etc. This is what I did here, but since it is a looping animation, I considered the start and end of the animation to be the same, frame 1. Doing all these fabric perturbations and then adding shading, it looked dodgy for a while but ended up working mostly well, although it took a good bit of time. Look there, you see that this part is very jittery and unpleasant. This is a mistake that I find myself making often, something moving back and forth rapidly from frame to frame. It's a bit of a bitch to clean up as well. This item in Dota, it is a defense for spellcasters. It creates a shield which absorbs a limited amount of damage and turns that damage into mana for more wizardry. Crimson Guard! This is one on which I very much enjoyed carving out the shapes of colour. It all came together very well, I have to say, starting with this absurd spiky shoulder bit here. For some reason I decided to go a bit ham on the lighting on this particular image, and so there is blue in the shadows on the right, and a green rim light on the left. Of all the visual elements, I think the gemstone in the belly button is the most notable, and so I shall have that be the cornerstone, I mean center stone of the animation. Particles shall fly from it with gusto. In Dota, this item creates a shield for yourself and your allies, which absorbs a particular amount of damage. By sheer coincidence, I have accidentally created a nod to this effect with the outline that pops in every loop, looking like a magical shield if you ask me. Many aspects of this animation use what I call explosive animation, where an event happens quickly and its effects fade slowly like an explosion. Explosive aspects of this animation include the armor rising up then sinking slowly, the outline and background brightening quickly, darkening slowly, belly button particles appear instantly and fade slowly. During these explosive events, you see the sheen on the armor also moves faster. All aspects are tied to this moment of explosiveness being the most important time in the animation. Assault Cuirass. This item is one that provides protection but also increases your own and your allies' attack speed while sabotaging that of your enemies. It is fairly simple to draw, I think, although the colour palette makes grey and green a difficult combination to work with. The glowing aura of this item, I think, is one of its most distinctive visual features, and so I have incorporated that into the pixel art. An intricate outline with 4 colours and a lot of anti-aliasing. If you're not aware, manual anti-aliasing is a very useful tool in pixel art and can be used to make lines seem smoother than they have any right to be at that resolution. I will show you a superb trick to easily make simple animations. Look closely. You draw a thing once, and then you draw it only one more time, 2 frames. Looks a bit shit, yes? Here's the trick. You duplicate the frames out, so that instead of 2 frames you have, for instance, 8, each image lasting 4 frames. On the frame before the image changes, you simply move or morph the image a little bit to look more like the second image. In this case I need only move it, and ta-da! For the work of 2 frames, you now have 8. It's not exceptional, but it's certainly adequate. There you go, there's some Dota items. If it takes your fancy, you can support me by buying my game Fisticuffs on Steam or Patreoning me. Bye! Whee!